Welcome back. This is Mike Layton, the founder of Stochastic Marketing, and for those who have listened to our podcast in the past, you may have heard me say that we've analyzed more than 1 billion HVAC, plumbing, or electrical contractors' invoices for the services they provided in homes. But a lot of those invoices are coming from larger contractors with annual sales in the range of $10 million a year to as much as $100 million a year. Counting maybe their multiple locations or trades. And a lot of those guys have executed their exit strategy or brought in outside investors to help fund their growth. And I'm excited to have with me here today Brian Cohen from SFP Advisors, who along with Fred Silverstein and the rest of the SFP team is heavily involved with many of the larger acquisitions that we have all read about in trade magazines. So say hello, Brian.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you having me today.
Hey, listen, Brian, we've worked with a lot of the same contractors across the country in all kinds of different markets, whether it's, California or your home state of Florida, New York, Arizona, Nevada, among others, and all over the place. And I know that we've both bound by various NDAs, so we can't get into a lot of specifics, but your experience is really worth talking a lot about, because a lot of the topics that are of interest to listeners, or any business owner, what's my company worth, and how do I make it more valuable, and what do I need to do to sell it someday, are topics that everybody ought to be thinking about. And if you could just kind of give our listeners who haven't heard of SFP Advisors some background on your team, they'd love to hear it.
Sure. I absolutely can. SFP Advisors was founded in 2001 by Fred Silverstein, our president and CEO. Fred is a CPA by trade. He actually, and I think a lot of your listeners who go back far enough will probably remember this, he was on the M&A team with Blue Dot. Blue Dot Services, they were up north.
Right.
They weren't involved in a roll-up. So Fred had developed a phenomenal reputation for being able to value companies properly. So they were able to roll a lot of companies up very quickly. Unfortunately, they hit their hiccup, and they had to start dispositioning them, and he got on the disposition team as well. Was involved in, dozens upon dozens of transactions. From there, he got picked up by another consolidator and helped them dispose of another 40 or 50 underperforming locations, and kind of realized, gosh, he's got a real knack at this. And he's being called all the time, and he's involved in all these deals. And that's when he decided to go out on his own and create SFP Advisors. Started off just as himself, working deals, and he would do a couple of them every year. You fast forward, we now have a team in place. We have an MBA, an in-house counsel, another banker on staff. We have a couple of outside folks that work with us in the accounting field, and obviously I've been with them for a number of years. Really just working on developing businesses and handling and working with our buyer database. But, to Fred's credit, he's developed, again, just an amazing reputation, and he's done, some of the largest deals that we've seen in this space. To give you an example, 2 years ago, Fred put the Horizon Services deal together with Sun Capital Partners. That was a pretty biggie in the space. This was an incredibly large company in the Northeast, and since that time, if I'm not mistaken, they've done another 9 acquisitions, and I know we've delivered, I think, at least 6 of them to them as well. And then last year, Fred did Ken Goodrich's deal for Gettle out west out of Vegas. He partnered them with Baum Capital, and they've done a number of acquisitions since as well in order to grow. But, like I say, Fred just has a knack with this. So I guess the reputation that I see from our standpoint is, number one, we only work with contractors. HVAC, plumbing, mechanical, industrial, electrical contractors. We do deals, obviously, sub $5 million to upwards of a couple $100 million, and we get deals done. And the reason why we do is we don't sugarcoat anything. This is what your company is worth, and if it makes sense for you to take a step forward, fantastic. We're going to bring a lot of buyers to the table in order to get a deal accomplished for you. And if it doesn't, no big deal. We're not going anywhere. In the case with Ken, for example, we were talking to Ken for 7 years before a deal happened. Fred knew the Horizon guys for 15 plus years, before a deal happened. So, our ability to develop relationships with folks and at least start to steer them in the right direction to help them grow their businesses. And at the same time, when there is an opportunity or a buyer contacts us and says, hey, we want to be in this specific geography, who do you know here? We know a lot of folks, and the ability for us to match everybody up and get deals done where both parties are happy, it's incredibly important. You think about it, Mike. You're a contractor. You've been doing this for how long? 20, 30, 40 years. This is the only thing you know.
Right.
So
right.
whatever your next step is going to be, you want to make sure that whoever you're selling to, whoever you're partnering with, the chemistry is there, the deal that you're getting is there, how long you want to stay on for, that's important that you're there too. But I want to pivot for one quick second because I'll tell you something interesting that we've seen here over the last 2 years. Stereotypically.
Yeah. You guys go way back, so make sure you tell us a little bit more about what the buyers and investors have been looking for, particularly in the past couple years, right? Because things are cyclical, and you guys have been around so long, you have a sense of the cycle. So what are you seeing in the past couple years? Because the activity levels now are nuts from my perspective. It's just crazy. Yeah.
Mike, they're ridiculous.
What are they looking for? What are they looking for?
They're looking for a residential contractor, residential repair and replacement, and residential service. A lot of service contracts in place. And the reason being is because the buyers see service contracts as the ability to predict revenue for the following year. You have a certain amount of service contracts, it's going to put you on a certain number of service calls, it's going to put you in front of a customer a certain number of times, and that's going to equate to a certain amount of revenue. So they love the predictability of it, and they see these businesses as recession-proof. And that's important because private equity is putting a lot of money into this space, and they're paying now, by the way. We just did a presentation, last week in Vegas, and one of the things that we talked about was, 7 is the new 5. So for years we've always heard about these 5x multiples being paid on these businesses. It's not 5 anymore. It's higher. We're seeing 7s, 8s, even 9s, and again that's dependent upon size and what your business mix looks like. But you're at a time now where private equity has come heavy into this space. We started introducing these deals to private equity probably, I want to say, 6, maybe 7 years ago. And to put it in perspective, Mike, 6, 7 years ago, we would show it to, less than 10 private equity companies. We did a deal up in the Northeast on A-Star, which actually your company did a lot of the marketing for. You guys doubled the revenue on him very quickly. Mike, we brought 65 buyers to the table for that company. We had 65 non-disclosure agreements that were written, that were signed. That means 65 folks took a look at, buyers potentially took a look at this deal. When we showed the seller this, he laughed. He said, "I'm going to get my number." So when you have that many buyers coming to the table, you're going to get your number. The chemistry fit becomes incredibly important as well. And so, the real quick is 65 buyers whittled down to, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have my notes in front of me, it's like 9 indications of interest, which are folks that say, hey, if we want to take a step forward, here's how we see the company being valued. Of those 9, the seller selected 6 that came in for site visits, which last, typically about a half a day each. And of those 6, it led to 4 letters of intent. From our perspective.
What are the outsiders? I mean, because, way back when I was younger, I got a master's in financial intermediaries, and I thought I had some basic, I'm old, so used to be actually tied to assets or cash flow, right? But just in the past 6 months, I have had some of our stochastic customers sell for combined of multiple guys $180 million.
Mm-hmm.
8 to 10 multiples, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I kind of can't get my head around that. But what are outsiders looking for that make them pay a premium, right, on EBITDA? I get, buying a $2 million guy, and talk a little bit about how the premium goes up the bigger you get, right? Because that's something that I think I was a little blind to, and I've had a few of these guys say, no, this is how this deal works. I buy a little guy, I stack them up, and then it's like printing money. You get a signature.
Yep.
You pay 2 or 3 times. You get to sign a piece of paper, and you already own the bigger one, and now what you paid 3 for just doubled in value in an hour. Talk us through that process, because it's hard to get your head around how this is going on.
Sure. So there's and you hit the nail on the head. So there's a saying, by the way, in the private equity world, that 10 million of EBITDA should equal, 10x, a 10 times multiple on the business. In this environment, probably even more. But to your point, the larger your revenue size is, the higher revenue is going to equal a higher multiple. Now, there's some other factors that play into this. What's your location? Listen, if you're in a top 50 DMA, designated market area, or MSA, I use the two terms interchangeably. There's value there as well. I mean, let's be real. If you're a $25 million company in Atlanta, or where I'm at in Fort Lauderdale, or in Houston, or in we'll call it a top market, you could expect that there's some additional dollars that get paid to you because of the geography that you're in. But what's proven out is you take this larger company, and here I am as a buyer looking at this larger company. I realize this guy has done something incredibly right here. He's got a strong growth rate. Typically, as he's made more money, his margin profile is going to go up. He's smart enough to recognize what his business mix should be. Residential versus commercial. Obviously, residential is going to get paid more. Commercial is a little bit lumpier. New construction versus retrofit. New construction is fantastic, but as soon as the market changes, guess what? So does your new construction balance. But pure residential service business, trades for the most period. So they're smart enough to understand and recognize that, and that's what they advertise to, and they get those service contracts in place because there's a strong, predictable cash flow behind it. And again, so to that point, you talked about recurring revenues. Well, where do you get recurring revenues from? Service contracts. And the other thing is this. It's the risk profile of a service contractor is very low. Because if you have, just the numbers, just using these numbers for sake of conversation, but if you have 10,000 service contracts in place and you have one unhappy client or customer, okay, is that going to affect the other 9,999? You swap one out for another one. You swap one out and you go pick up 300 more. I mean, it's not going to rock your boat. But if you're a commercial or a mechanical contractor, these mechanical contractors, by the way, Mike, these guys do huge, huge numbers. Right. But it's a business cycle. So when the economy is great and there's a lot of capital expenditures happening through hospitals and universities, these guys pick up business left, right, and center. But it becomes, what does the backlog look like, and what's your WIP schedules look like? It's a different way that those companies get valued. But they see residential HVAC repair and replacement as recession-proof. And the other thing that these big guys do, we always ask this question. Okay, you're a 25, 30, 40, $50 million company. I don't think that owner is there 80 hours a week anymore. I think that owner has put the right people in place. And to that point, that's something we talk about with that bench strength. If for everybody who's listening, if you want to get a good idea, if you have a good management team and or bench strength, ask yourself this question. Can you go out of town for a month and not worry about the business? And if you can, you've got a pretty good bench strength in place. You've got a good management team. Because when you exit the business...
I hope my wife doesn't listen to this. That's a copy. I'm just not going to tell her this.
Right. But you get to the point is, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, the more you can spend away from your business and your business continues to move up and to the right, meaning you still have your year-after-year growth, or you're checking 1 month, 2019, October versus 2018 October, and the business continued to increase, you've got the right people in place. So how long can you go away from your business and not stress out that the things are going to move properly? How have you empowered your management team? And let me tell you why that becomes important. Because when these deals get done, if you're an owner that has a great management team in place, you have more selling options than if you don't. So if the business is not dependent upon you, when you go to sell, your world of buyers open up. Because there's some buyers that want to buy your business and want to keep you on board for a certain amount of time through a transition or into a next sale. And there's some companies that want to buy your business and buy you out. And in a sense, they want to now partner with your management team. If you have the right management team in place, again, it just opens you up for more opportunities, period. And, you think of why these guys want to do this. Mike, the guy who's 50, 80, $100 million, he's getting the best rates on how many things? He's getting the best pricing because of his size on just about anything you could think of as far as his business is concerned. Go combine a couple of those businesses now. Go put yourself together a $300-400 million company. What do you think the buy rates they're getting on everything is now? You start to look at all the back office savings, and all of this contributes to that EBITDA number, that earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, which is what all these deals are premised upon. So,
well, let's talk about that.
Sorry to be long-winded.
No, it's good. But, I mean, people want to hear they want to hear someone that's actually in the middle of where their goal is. But let's just talk about EBITDA and service agreements, because one of the guys that you mentioned that was a good customer of ours, this is kind of a philosophical chicken or an egg kind of conversation. One of the companies you mentioned that you did that deal in and brought all those buyers to, their new customer production and value was off the charts, right? They weren't really doing much on service agreements clubs, but they're like assassins, right? They're as good as anybody at getting into a new customer, turning it into a high value install, getting the money and getting out. So it's sort of the chicken or an egg. If the new customer production coming out of a house, in their case, they're coming out with $6,000 on average when they knocked on a door, that goes to the bottom line. So it's a weird deal. Like, I got some customers that, are all about service agreements, but their value of a household low, so their EBITDA is low.
Yep.
And on the flip side, if they want to sell, if a private equity came in and said, well, we're showing your service agreements, and they go, well, I don't need them. I sell the install and I move on. They have great EBITDA, but they don't have much saleability, right? So what's the way to balance the two, right? So that I make a lot of money, and then I give the private equity guys, whether they're right or wrong, what they want, and it makes them pay more than maybe some of my customers who are taking their checks go, these guys are crazy, but I got to say yes, right?
Yep.
How do you go through that? Because you've been behind the curtain with those guys when you're hearing them talk themselves into paying the premium for service agreements, when I think the money's driven by EBITDA, I think is driven by new customers.
Sure. And you and I have had this conversation going on a couple of years now, and you show me all the numbers, and I understand it. Every buyer is different. Okay. So again, I'm generalizing when I talk about service agreements and service contracts, because the reality is this, Mike, most of the folks that are probably listening do a lot of that anyhow. But the ones that go against the grain, who understand what you've put together, that realize that, hey, I'm going to make a lot of money off my client real quick, and then I'm not going to see anything for quite some time. It's just a different approach to the business. Now, what's interesting is, and again, with the deal that we talked about when we handled the A-Star transaction, up in the Northeast, they were a client of yours. You took that company and basically doubled their business within a couple quick years with your direct marketing and the way you understood the analytics and the way they understood the analytics with you. I don't want to say they took a risk, but hey, they said, I get it. The numbers make sense. Let's go in that direction. They got paid very handsomely. They got paid along the same lines as if this company had nothing but service contracts. So it's just a different business philosophy. I don't want to say you kind of choose one or do the other, but if you can figure out a way to make sure that you have your service contracts and you're making sure that you get a lot of replacement business, I think you kind of have the best of both worlds. But you have buyers that are now understanding your methodology and the way you're doing it and attacking it as much as they are from the service agreements.
So they don't get hurt. They don't get hurt, right? It's as long as they're making they're making money. Right. Okay.
Correct. When we put the non-disclosure agreements together and we put together the confidential information memorandum, and that is the story of the business and how they've gotten from where they were to where they are and how they go about doing things. You have some buyers that appreciate how the way that you have done it with respect to A-Star, and they move forward. Well, I'm telling you, we had 65 people that said, that's really interesting. I want to see more. I want to learn more. That's a lot of buyers. So I wouldn't get bent out of shape, if you're attacking it, the way that you like to attack it. Absolutely not. The buyers are there. And Mike, it's such a hot market now. We get probably.
You're starting to get all excited here. It sounds like dating, right? Walk people through this. This sounds like dating, except it's starting to sound like an orgy. So, and this is routine to, good-looking guy like you from Miami, but the rest of us that are running businesses and old guys in the Midwest, some of these larger contractor sales and little ones too. And I say little, I don't mean I just little related to $100 million.
Sure.
Sounds like dating, and then then there's an engagement period. Today's world, that's 2 years. Then a wedding ceremony, then a honeymoon period, and eventually they get all the money, changes hands. There's a lot of steps between the first date and the end of the honeymoon. Walk guys through that so they have a realistic expectation of, how long does this take? What do you got to have cleaned up, right? Tell me more about that.
Sure. So for example, I'll walk you through how it works through our office here. So we have a conversation with someone, okay? And, people don't wake up in the morning and say, gosh, I can't wait to hear from Brian Cohen at SF&P Advisors. I want to sell my business today, But the smart ones say, there's a lot of activity out there. I wonder what that would look like. They want to explore it. So, we have a conversation, and the reality is we ask for maybe a half a dozen pieces of financial information. And the reason why we do that is we don't want to be too burdensome, I'm saying that word properly, I hope, on the staff or on the owner or anything else. Just get us over these simple pieces of information. You could probably go into QuickBooks, click 6 buttons, and get it over to us. We're going to put a model together, and that's going to give a rough valuation on the business. And again, this is pre to the first step. This is before anything. We're going to get on that call. We're going to have a conversation and say, hey, here's what the business is worth. Here's the range. If we went to market, here's what some of those options and some of those next steps might look like. At that point in time, then an owner has a decision to make. So let's assume that they like what we said. And again, we don't sugarcoat anything. We've done enough of these deals, so we have a pretty good idea what the enterprise value is going to be if we decided to take a step forward. And like I said, we've delivered like 98.5% of the time. So they make a decision to take a step forward. There's an engagement letter that's signed with us. There is a host of financial information that we request. It's 50 or 60 items. It's a pain in the ass, but you have to do it. And through that, we're going to put together this confidential information memorandum. Now, depending upon how quickly the owner can move in supplying us with a certain amount of information is how quickly we can get a company to market. So from signing of an engagement letter to getting them to market, depending on how well they have their stuff put together, it could be 4 weeks, which isn't a long time, believe it or not. Maybe 4 or 5 weeks. We've had some companies that take a couple months to get that information together. Now, once they have that together and over to us, obviously we start reaching out and having conversations with our buyers. We get them to sign non-disclosure agreements. We give them the confidential information memorandum. We answer questions back and forth. We like that process to be less than a month, and we want to start to move those buyers down a path to what we call a management call. So once we've had enough conversations with enough buyers that they're interested, they have some deeper questions they want to have answered, we set up calls with ourselves, the buyer, and the owner and management team if the management team is available. Off of those calls, we start talking about, indications of interest, where the value of the company is, and we're going to receive letters that say, hey, we like this company, and here's kind of where we're valuing it. We share all that information.
You're looking for LOIs or something? They go kind of.
Not yet. Just an indication of interest, which is non-binding. It's just something that's put together. It's a one page. It's to say, Mike, we like this business. Here's the value expectation that we're seeing.
Okay.
And as long as it's in alignment with where we're at, and that the call went well, and the seller feels comfortable, that company typically would get invited to what's called a site visit. Site visits where things get a little bit deeper. They're going to come in. They want to see the business. They want to kick the tires. They want to take a look around. Oftentimes these meetings are done off-site because typically the owners haven't said anything to their employees, and they don't need to do anything at that point in time. There'll be a dinner so everybody, you can have some deeper conversation and understand these people on a personal level because, Mike, chemistry is an incredibly important part of this. You have to like the people you're going to move forward and do business with.
Yeah, talk about that because, what are some of the deal killers? Because that you should avoid. Normal dating. What you're talking about is kind of almost like speed dating. But for normal dating, maybe a felony conviction might turn somebody off. Where have you been for this 5-year period while I was away? Maybe that felony is a bonus for some section of the population in St. Louis. But I don't know. But what are the things that contractors should look for in a buyer? Because it goes both ways, right? You got to get some chemistry.
Sure.
You've been at those dinners. Tell us what goes on.
There's the dinners are really more, believe it or not, are more personal. You're having conversations. You're getting an understanding of what this person is about. Like, listen, you and I are friends. I know you're into baseball. You know I'm into sports. Those are the kinds of am I in alignment with this person's overall life philosophy? Do we get along? Is there commonality here? Because if either not as much on the buyer side, but if the seller doesn't feel there's a fit, the chemistry isn't there, it doesn't matter what they're offering, they don't want to do business with these folks. We've been involved in some deals this year, Mike, where the top offer wasn't the one that got chosen. It was the second one because they felt more of a better fit with the buyer that was coming in financially in second place than the one that was coming in first place. So the dinners
the fit with their people, right? Too. It's not just them, right? It's the whole the team that they've worked with for 20 years, which includes a lot of relatives in a lot of those businesses, right?
Sometimes, yes. Yep. Yeah. And to take a step back, the site visit itself, is the sit down. This is where the buyer is going to ask a lot of deeper questions. They really want to get a great understanding of the business, how it operates. They want to talk about the management team, the folks that are in place. We have conversations with businesses. Yes, we got a great management team. We just put our GM in place 6 months ago. Okay, let's get real.
Well, talk about that because that's one answer, but also a lot visualize when listeners are saying, okay, there's I'm visioning my exit strategy, and then there's kind of in the back seat of the car, they want to visualize. Well, what about I've got my exit strategy, but what about the people, the team I am leaving behind, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of team is the buyer looking for post sale, right? Family members, all that stuff, ages, what happens to the team that's left behind?
Good question. So oftentimes the team is really not left behind because the owner is going to stay on board. So basically what's happened is the owner is partnered up with a private, let's say private equity company. I use that term very loosely, but we'll call it a buyer. They've sold out part of their company and they've retained part of the company. So to all the employees, nothing has changed. Legally, there's a new corporation that's been set up that now, the seller owns a part of and the buyer owns a part of. But for the most part, a lot of the things stay the same. The buyer just now, again, I'm averaging some of these things out, but once a month we'll have a call with the buyer and review through numbers and KPIs and stuff along those lines. Mm-hmm. But in a scenario where the owner gets bought out altogether, that buyer wants to meet with your management team. They want to have conversations and understand the philosophies of the management team. And is the management team mature enough and responsible enough to be able to run and drive a business? Because the management team is going to be answering to a new buyer now. What's nice about that is the new buyer coming in typically is going to incentivize, their leftover management, the management team that's staying behind, in a different way than you were doing it. There's going to be different incentives, there are going to be pegs, and there's going to be different levels of bonuses in order for them to go ahead and drive the business. So it's not often that you see the management team ever get hurt. Think about this, Mike. If you're a $25 million business and you're latching up with a private equity company that owns 6 or 7 of these that's doing, a couple $100 million in revenue, chances are they're going to have a better 401k plan, a better health insurance plan, better incentives in place, for the team to make more money. And if you have the right people on the bus, the right people working for you, they understand that all the opportunities they have are going to grow. They're going to get better things than they had from before. And it's not a knock on current ownership. You only knew what you knew up to $25 million. Now you're playing with the guys at $200 million. It's just a different game. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just tell our listeners a little bit about that first conversation with SFP advisors, because, the private equity guys do it for a living, right? All the ones that I've met, some of the ones you've met, they're very sharp guys. They do this all the time. It's not stressful for them. What would be stressful for them is maybe putting in their own water heater in their house, right? That would really – but think about it, right? So all the contractors go, okay, I got a truck. I got all the gear. I know what I need. I bring it in. I go by, I go to the warehouse. I put it in. It should take me an hour, right? So everybody has things that they're really good at, and just like you guys, right? So what's that first conversation with SFP? What's it like? Who's on that call? And, how do you start to get on somebody's radar like yourselves, right?
Sure. Sooner
rather than later. Like, you don't want to try and sell the business. You don't want to have the first call 2 months before you need to get out of town.
No. I mean, we've been having what we've been saying here for the last number of years, educate yourselves. So how do you educate yourself? You call us. We give you, we call it a business valuation estimate. We're not putting a 40-page document together and signing CPA. Get us over some basic financial information that we request. We'll put a model together, and now you're armed with a rough idea of what your business is worth. But in those conversations, we need to understand, where are you at? What's your year-over-year for the last number of years look like? What's your management team look like? What's in your best interest? Do you want to stay on? Do you want to leave? Now, you don't have to have all of those questions answered, but the more of them that are answered, the easy, in our follow-up conversations, it makes it easier for us to determine what direction to go ahead and go in, if there is any direction to go in. What do you need to get out of this? Some guys, they work with incredibly sophisticated financial planners that say, hey, if you want to sell your business, here's the number you need in order to live the lifestyle that you like. So you need to have some of those ideas too. We need to get understanding what your business mix looks like. We need to understand how long you've been in business. What are your Google ratings, your Google reviews? What's your overall star ratings? How do you go ahead and market and advertise? Who's your CRM company that you're using? Who are the marketing companies that you're using? Because what happens, Mike, believe it or not, is as somebody starts to think about going to market, they stop running their business in the normal, ordinary course they have been, because they're trying to save some money to increase their EBITDA number. Well, to your point that you said from before, these private equity guys are professional deal makers. They bring a team together. They're going to look and uncover every penny. If they see something that's out of the ordinary course of business, I don't say it's a red flag, but they're going to question it. You have got to continue to run your business as if you're going to run it for the next 10 years, not as if you're going to try and sell it within the next 10 months. So you have to do things the way you've always done.
They're not, don't scare our listeners, right? This is not like the IRS that says I legally can go back all these years. Really, they're talking about, they're most concerned with the most recent 3, right?
Yes.
Nothing's going crazy. I haven't juiced the books. I haven't stopped paying myself, so I show all this funny money on the bottom line.
Correct.
3 years and predictability, and okay, the business is growing, costs are going down, sales are going up, profits are okay. Isn't that what they're really doing? It's not like they're going to go back to the whole life, right?
Correct. And I appreciate you saying that. We're not the IRS. The buyer's not the IRS. We have some conversation with folks, and then sometimes they're like, well, do you want to know that we ran some of the things through the business? Of course we want to know you ran some of the personal stuff through the business. That's going to get added back to your EBITDA. The definition, Mike, of an add back is, if you were selling your business tomorrow, and you look back over the last year, what expenses did you have over the last year that aren't going to continue forward with the new buyer? We're going to dig in and find all those, and obviously add those back into your EBITDA. But we're not the IRS. The private equity company isn't the IRS. They're looking back to your financials to make sure that whatever you were doing is very consistent across the board.
Yeah, I've had a guy tell me one time, he says, it's pretty rare for me to go into an organization and not find a ski boat or something.
Country club membership, or second home.
Right. That ski boat's on the books as a service van. Like, okay, this is cool. Next time I come back, get it off the lot. We can adjust that, but just don't. When I look at it, I need to not see it. Right?
Sure.
I get it.
And it gets added back. It gets added back.
Okay. How do the guys that listen to this kind of talk to you? Because it's not, most of our listeners are not $25 million guys, but there's still a lot of the people you mentioned. One of the ways they got to be a $100 million contractor is they bought up, and I've got some customers that are great at this, they bought up strings of $2.5 million, $5 million, $10 million guys who are listening. How do they reach out to you to have that first conversation, right? And obviously on the screen here, it's got your contact info, but how do you want people to reach out to you to have that first conversation?
I mean, you can, my cell phone number. I mean, you could text me. Hey, this I found out about you. Here's who I am. Let me know when you have a time for a call. My number, it's easy, 954-226-3409. You can call me. If I can't take the call, it'll go to voicemail. I'm pretty responsive. And the reason why I give out my cell, by the way, Mike, is it starts ringing typically at about 7:30 every morning. With buyers and prospects, everybody wants to start. And to give you an example, last night I wrapped up at about 11. So it's easier just to do everything through my cell. But you can email me as well. And we do have a lot of folks that are calling us that are looking to make acquisitions. Hey, how do I go about doing this? And I will be more than happy to walk you through it. Hey, this is what you look for. Here's how you find these companies. Keep in mind what the downside is, that oftentimes these companies that are sub $3 million, there's a reason why they're sub $3 million. They don't have their financials together. So you have to make educated guesses about what you think the value of the company is, because they can't provide you with the financial information. It's a little bit challenging, but if you've gone through it enough times, you start to see a pattern, and you have the confidence in order to be able to go ahead and make that acquisition. Because the reality is you want their 10 techs, right? You just don't want the problems that come along with the business. So,
and you guys have been doing this so long, right? You've been doing it so long that a guy calls you and he really isn't ready. To your point, he's a $3 million guy. Okay, and a brief conversation with you allows you to say, listen, if you before you start to look for someone to date, you need to have this, and that squared away, right?
Yep.
And okay. And then you may talk to that. You guys have been doing this a long time. You've seen the cycles. It may be 3 years from now before he's managed to get his act together.
Yep.
But then the second conversation is, okay, cool, you're still there. You've gotten bigger. Got everything kind of nailed down. You obviously haven't gotten any younger. Okay, and now we might be able to get serious about it. So I just appreciate you guys talking about it. I know this is a high interest to people, as it ought to be. And the neat thing about the industry is, like you, I've got customers I work with for 10 years, and some of these guys, it's really cool. I mean, they are now rich, right? And they started a business, and they're rich, and they're kind of can't believe it themselves. And so that's why I think people ought to, talk to you and kind of listen to you if they're thinking about that and asking those kind of questions. So it's always good. It's always good to talk to you. And for all our listeners, just look at the SFP's info on the screen here. Reach out to him if you're serious, right? Don't reach out to him. It's not like you're shopping online for used car parts here. I mean, be respectful of his time, because he is. Every time I've ever been with him, and I literally every time, if it's 11 o'clock at night at an event or 7 in the morning at breakfast, his phone is ringing. So. If you're serious, reach out to him, and watch for future podcasts. But I appreciate everybody listening, and hopefully Brian will go out to the beach now, since he's down there in South Florida, and enjoy the weekend. All right,
Mike. Thank you very much for having me today, Mike. I appreciate it, and whatever I can do to help. Anybody has any questions, I'm available.
All right, appreciate you finding the time. Thanks a bunch.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right, take care.